The ocean was calm, the sky was clear, and on that offshore platform, hundreds of kilometers from land, the crew believed it was just another routine shift. But what they didn't know was that beneath their feet, pressure was building, silently, violently, and unstoppable. This is the story of the offshore blowout that changed safety forever. And what really happened that day will shock you. Before we dive in, remember, every major disaster in history leaves behind a lesson. A lesson written in blood, loss, and irreversible damage. And this one, it forced the entire world to rethink offshore safety from the ground up. Our story begins at 2:10 p.m. The drilling team had been fighting a stubborn well for days. Mud weight adjustments, circulation checks, pressure readings. Everything looked normal on paper. But deep inside the wellbore, hydrocarbons were pushing back harder than anyone realized. A junior operator noticed something strange, a slight fluctuation in the flow-out meter. It wasn't alarming, but it wasn't normal either. He reported it. The supervisor glanced at the numbers, shrugged, and said, "Probably just trapped mud gas. Keep monitoring." That single decision would become one of the most haunting moments in offshore history. Minutes later, the drill floor crew heard a faint hiss. Not loud, not dramatic, just a whisper of danger. But in offshore drilling, a whisper can become a scream in seconds. Suddenly, the mud kits began overflowing. Gas alarms started flashing. The well was kicking, and it was kicking hard. The driller hit the BOP close command, but the pressure spike was too fast, too violent. Gas shot up the riser like a missile. Within seconds, the platform shook. A massive column of gas erupted from the drill floor, blasting mud, metal, and debris into the air. Workers ran. Radios screamed. The emergency shutdown system triggered, but it was too late. The gas cloud ignited. A fireball engulfed the platform, turning steel into molten fragments and daylight into darkness. The blast was so powerful that nearby vessels felt the shockwave. The crew had only moments to react. Some jumped into the ocean, some ran toward lifeboats, and some never made it out. But here's the part most people don't know. This wasn't just a blowout. It was a chain reaction of ignored warnings, flawed assumptions, and safety systems that failed when they were needed the most. In the next part, we'll break down the exact sequence of failures, mechanical, procedural, and human, that allowed this disaster to unfold. Because understanding the truth behind this blowout is the only way to prevent the next one. Stay with me. Part 2 reveals what really went wrong beneath the surface. When the fireball erupted and the platform was swallowed in flames, the world saw only the final explosion. But disasters never begin with the blast. They begin with small cracks, tiny decisions, overlooked warnings, and systems that fail quietly long before they fail loudly. To understand what really happened, we must rewind the clock. Hours before the blowout, the well had shown subtle signs of instability. Pressure readings fluctuated. Mud returns were inconsistent. The kick indicators weren't screaming, but they were whispering. And offshore, whispers matter. Yet the crew was under pressure too. Pressure to finish the well, pressure to stay on schedule, pressure to avoid costly delays. And when production pressure competes with safety pressure, the outcome is predictable. The first major failure was well-controlled discipline. The mud weight had been reduced earlier to speed up operations. It wasn't a reckless decision, but it was a risky one. A lighter mud column meant less resistance against formation pressure, and deep below, the reservoir was waiting for its moment. The second failure was misinterpreting the kick signals. The flow-out anomaly the junior operator noticed wasn't just trapped gas, it was the formation pushing back. But the team relied too heavily on surface indicators, forgetting that downhole conditions can change faster than instruments can detect. Then came the BOP failure, the most critical breakdown of all. The blowout preventer, the last line of defense, was supposed to shear the drill pipe and seal the well. But when the driller activated it, nothing happened. Later investigations revealed the truth. A hydraulic leak had weakened the system. A control pod malfunctioned, and the shear rams, designed to cut through steel, couldn't fully close because the pipe wasn't centered. A billion-dollar piece of safety equipment failed at the exact moment it was needed most. But the disaster didn't stop there. The gas detection system triggered alarms, yet the ventilation fans continued running for precious seconds, pulling flammable gas into enclosed areas. The emergency shutdown system activated, but the explosion occurred before isolation valves could fully close. Every barrier that should have stopped the blowout either failed, lagged, or wasn't designed for a scenario this violent. And then there was the human factor. In the chaos, communication broke down. Some workers didn't hear evacuation orders. Others ran toward muster stations already engulfed in smoke. Lifeboats couldn't be launched due to intense heat. The crew fought for survival in conditions no training drill could replicate. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This disaster wasn't caused by one big mistake. It was caused by many small ones, stacked on top of each other, waiting for the perfect moment to collapse. In Part 3, we'll uncover the deeper systemic issues, organizational culture, cost-cutting decisions, and regulatory gaps that allowed this catastrophe to happen. Because the real story isn't just about equipment failure. It's about the mindset that made the failure possible. Stay with me. Part 3 reveals the hidden decisions that shaped this tragedy. Part 3, the hidden decisions behind the disaster. To understand why this blowout became one of the most devastating offshore disasters in history, we must look beyond the equipment and beyond the crew. Because the real causes weren't only on the platform. They were in boardrooms, budget meetings, and regulatory offices thousands of kilometers away. Disasters don't start at the worksite. They start in the decisions made long before the first shift begins. In the months leading up to the incident, the operator was under immense financial pressure. The project was behind schedule. Drilling costs were rising, and every extra day offshore meant millions lost. So, the focus quietly shifted, from safety to speed, from caution to completion. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. Finish the well. Don't delay. Don't overthink. This mindset created the first systemic failure, risk normalization. Small deviations became acceptable. Minor anomalies were brushed aside. Procedures were followed, but only just enough to tick the box. And when a company begins to normalize risk, the workforce follows. The second systemic failure was cost-driven decision-making. Maintenance budgets were trimmed. Non-critical repairs were postponed. The BOP, which later failed catastrophically, had been flagged for servicing months earlier. But shutting down operations to fix it would have meant delays, and delays meant money. So the repair was deferred. It should hold, someone said, and that assumption cost lives. Then came the regulatory gap. Offshore regulations existed, but they were outdated, fragmented, and heavily reliant on self-reporting. Audits were scheduled, not surprise inspections. Safety cases were reviewed on paper, not tested in real conditions. The system trusted companies to police themselves. And trust without verification is not safety. It's hope disguised as compliance. But perhaps the most dangerous failure was organizational culture. Workers felt pressure to avoid raising concerns that might slow operations. Supervisors were hesitant to escalate issues unless they were absolutely certain. And management, far removed from the rig, relied on filtered reports that painted a picture far safer than reality. In this environment, early warning signs weren't just missed. They were softened, diluted, and sometimes ignored entirely. When investigators later reviewed internal emails, maintenance logs, and safety reports, a disturbing pattern emerged. The disaster wasn't a surprise, it was predictable. Multiple people had raised concerns about the well's stability. Engineers had questioned the mud weight reduction. Technicians had reported BOP control issues, but each warning was treated as a small inconvenience, not a critical threat. And that's the truth most people never hear. Catastrophes aren't caused by one big mistake. They're caused by a culture that allows many small mistakes to stack up until the system collapses. In Part 4, we'll explore the aftermath, the investigations, the reforms, and the global safety changes that reshaped offshore operations forever. Because the world didn't just watch this disaster, it learned from it, and those lessons continue to save lives today. Stay with me. Part 4 reveals how this tragedy transformed the future of offshore safety. Part 4. The aftermath that reshaped offshore safety. When the flames finally died and the ocean calmed, the world was left staring at the smoking remains of a platform that once symbolized engineering power. But now it symbolized something else: how fragile safety becomes when warning signs are ignored. The aftermath of the blowout was unlike anything the offshore industry had ever seen. Governments, regulators, engineers, and safety experts rushed to understand how a modern platform equipped with advanced systems could fail so completely. The first wave of investigations exposed the uncomfortable truth. The disaster wasn't caused by a single failure. It was caused by a collapse of every barrier, from engineering controls to human judgment. And that realization triggered a global transformation. One of the biggest changes was the overhaul of blowout preventer standards. The BOP that failed during the incident became the center of worldwide scrutiny. Regulators demanded stronger shear rams, redundant control pods, real-time diagnostics, and mandatory testing under realistic conditions. No longer would companies rely on assumptions. The new rule was simple: prove it works, every time. Next came the rise of Safety and Environmental Management Systems, SEMS. These frameworks forced companies to document hazards, verify controls, and involve workers in safety decisions. Offshore safety was no longer just a checklist. It became a living system that had to be demonstrated, audited, and continuously improved. The disaster also reshaped training and competency standards. Workers were no longer trained only for routine operations. They were trained for chaos. High-fidelity simulators, emergency response drills, and scenario-based training became mandatory. The goal was clear: when the unexpected happens, the workforce must react with precision, not panic. Another major shift was the introduction of real-time monitoring centers. Instead of relying solely on the crew offshore, experts onshore now monitor pressure trends, flow rates, and well integrity 24/7. If something looks wrong, they intervene immediately.